Hello everyone. As you can see, I'm driving on a cold winter day towards a mountain. At the base of the mountain is a line of karst, and there's some holes or some sunken points that I want to check out. When I checked them last time, it was too warm, so I couldn't really get a good feel for airflow. My hope is that visiting them in this weather will be able to give me some better signs of whether there's airflow or not. Of course, just because it has or doesn't have airflow doesn't mean it'll be a good cave, but right now all they are is just depressions in the ground, so airflow would be a good sign that there's something more than just a hollow in the ground. Well, I'm here. Guess we're just going to walk through the woods and see what we can find. The temperature is just starting to warm up. Hopefully it doesn't go too much above freezing while I'm walking. Otherwise that could kind of hurt my ability to find some ice and some melt. Now, I believe the creek typically runs down along this valley here. It looks like it's completely frozen over. Be interesting to see if it turns to water on further up or not. Looks like there's some other people here today. Hopefully they're not hunting, otherwise I might interfere with that. I'll try to stay away. Hopefully the tracks don't go where I want to go. Well, it looks as if the water is flowing on up the valley here. Also looks like the water is still entering this sink complex here, which is my main area of focus. Again, I'm just gonna look around at some of these holes and go up on this ridge here too, and over here as well. See if I can't find any holes with warm air coming out. So I'll pull the camera back out if I find anything. Alright, so I'm now in the sink complex. I've already made an interesting observation. In the summer, the water got rerouted and it went into this big old hole right here. And it would just sink like crazy. I'm not sure if the water flow has increased or if the hole got plugged up, but now it is continuing on its way into some of the holes that I had interest in. And even over here, it's pulling up and going off in this direction. So it's interesting to see that these holes are taking water now. Before they were not. Yep, the water is clearly entering these holes here. I noticed some slight melting, some slight frost, but very, very, very minimal. Just on the other side of this hole here, there is a hole that seems a little bit more consistent with what I was expecting to find or hoping to find. But airflow is almost negligible. Part of that could just be due to the very small size of the hole and not allowing much air to come through. Over here as well, just very, very minor. Very minor. Nothing I would consider impressive. Let's see, there's a hole up here too. I wonder if there's any melting around that. No, none at all that I can see. Well, keep on walking and looking. Okay, so here's a little something. I'm in a broad but shallow sink. There's some limestone outcropping over here. The sink is just east of that sink complex I was previously in, where there's sinking water. You can see on the underside of this particular outcrop that also has a slot going down in, that there's some frost on the underside of this rock. The only way I could explain this is that warm air is coming out. As it's meeting the cold air, it's crystallizing on the outcrop, and it's on the top side of the rock because the hot air would be rising and hugging that wall there. So that's interesting. It doesn't look, well, I don't know. I don't think it gets down too deep because I've looked in this one before, but apparently it does keep going. But once again, it's not an exceptional amount of air coming through there. So a good data point, not necessarily a good data point. Check it out. It's what you call a little solution tube. This animal's dug into it a little bit. There is actually just a touch of frost on the top of this tube. So I would wager that this also has just a hint of air. Check that little guy out there. Guess there's some, like a drip of water comes out every time. It's turned into a little ice waterfall. Kind of neat. This is a limestone outcrop, of course. Very near to that limestone outcropping, there is a little something. Definitely not much, but it is a little something. A little depression here with a rock with some hoarfrost on it. Probably a lot of digging to get to whatever's down in there, but that's interesting. Well, I'm now at Dwindle Cave. There is more frost on the sides and ceiling than I would have expected. It's too hard to say if that's emanating or if that's circulating. The rocks down here are very dry, but when I say circulating, basically what I mean is cold air coming down, sinking into the cave, warming up, then coming back out as warm air and frosting. It's too hard to say. I wouldn't rule it out that it's emanating from the cave as opposed to circulating, but it's just too hard to say. But yeah, either way, this cave needs another look when the water's a little bit lower. Certainly not now with the water being so high. Freeze in an instant. Probably never find this one again even if I try, but I'll document it anyway. So this hill gets really steep just up the valley a very short distance. There's a pretty good looking melt spot here. I'd say it's actively melting things around it from the inside. It's not, again, what I would call an impressive one, but it's pretty active actually. And there's something right up here too, just a hint of hoarfrost there. So, I don't know. Not too far away from the cave, but it's definitely beyond the current known extent. Interesting. Wonder if I could maybe get a stick shove in there real good. That way when I'm back here, I'll know the location by the stick. So just beyond the side of the camera here, the terrain dips down and that's where the stream is. It's an old sink area that's basically been completely collapsed in. It's now just a wide area of the stream. But clearly a line of karst. There's a lot of big sinks, including one which I'm next to here. It's up on the bench above the Dwindle Cave. And a very small depression here. And there's a little hole off to the side. Again, nothing incredibly impressive, but there is some crystals around the perimeter, so probably a little something. But just given the activity of this area, it might pay off to follow even a small hole. Okay, I decided to walk a lot further than I thought I would, following just this overall line of karst. Way down there is that broad area of the stream where the line of sink starts. I've walked a fair distance and I've encountered consistent activity. Next to this tree, there is a small sign of frost next to just a small depression here. It's nothing more than a data point at this point, but it's one of the better signs. Alright, back where I was, there were some pretty good sinks, but the amount of broken logs and branches that were thrown into these sinks were pretty significant. Clearly they don't want anybody, whoever they are, to do anything with those holes. I've turned the camera back on because I hear a stream coming off of this bench here, and I am observing that it doesn't continue, so this is probably going to be a good one. I'm trying to figure out the terrain a little bit. That bench up there are sinks on top of it, and this bench drops down, and then there's sinks down here. So maybe it's a representation of different limestones, different resistances, I don't know. But yeah, if water has a sink to drop into, it's going to do that. If it can't find one as it goes to the top of this bench, it seems to come down here to find sinks down here. So we'll see where this water's going. Again, I'm expecting it's probably going to be pretty good, just because the water terminates. So it comes off this bench, comes down, and yep, got a pretty interesting looking hole here. Now I am not observing any signs of backing up. Elsewhere on this mountain, there was a similar situation where water would come down off a bench and go into the ground. The problem with those spots is that they would back up from time to time. So that's not necessarily a bad thing, but not a great thing either. Here, however, the water seems to be sinking completely unimpeded. So, very promising. Let's see if we can't get a little bit closer look. Oh, forest jungle gym. Okay, so it is pulling up slightly there, actually. Now, that could just be due to a dam, or it could be an actual restriction there. Not sure. But, it's interesting. Yeah, I'm not going to go on down there today, because by myself, I don't know if there's any ice down there or anything like that. It doesn't appear to be. Who knows how much I might sink in dirt, or who knows what else. But this might be worth coming back to in the summer. Taking another look at it under different conditions. Interesting. Still making my way back to the stream. There was one area in this broad, shallow sink area that I waited till the last time to check out. You see, this is a very, very recent collapse. Not seeing any significant signs of melt in the sink. You can see it's very recent activity there. But I did notice kind of where this collapse is trending. In that same direction, there is a point of interest here. Whatever that was collapsing into, seems like this might be going to the same place. This is actually one of the better ones I've seen. You can see inside water dripping from the melt that's being generated. These are real damp and wet. I mean, again, it's not a gusher. I don't really expect to find any gushers on this mountain, honestly. Not saying that they won't exist, but that's one of the better ones I found today. Oh, right by my foot, didn't even notice it. Just another little guy there. One point of interest. This might be the last thing I document today. I'm not too sure. Depends on if I want to walk some new spots or not. Just to the side of that very recent collapse, there's another depression area, which also has actually its own decent hole. Now, I'm not really picking up on too much melt like the other area, but clearly this is associated with the same thing. Clearly there's something that runs all the way north and south here. So whatever you dug here, you'd probably end up getting into the same thing right over there. Pick your poison sort of thing. Alright, found another decent point of interest. I'm making my way back to Dwindle Cave, kind of paralleling the stream. Decent sink here. You can see the south facing slope of the sink is melting pretty good, which of course can complicate detecting any sort of melt. But down at the very bottom of it, I am clearly picking up on some hoarfrost. It's actually beautiful, but all of this seems to be more than just melt. Even on these branches here, see that? Yeah, I think this whole area, this is actually a pretty decent sized melt area. I've probably said this a couple times already, but this is probably the best one for sure. Get some melt on those branches too. Melt all the way over here. Now, this is a little bit more of a complicated operation here. Lots of rocks spread over a wider area. But probably the greatest volume of airflow by far. Wee bit of something there. Nothing in those that I can see. Even over here, there's a melt around that perimeter. So let's just take a peek over this bench for reference, see how close or far from Dwindle Cave we are. I mean, undoubtedly there's probably some degree of association. Where's the at? Okay, yeah. So that's the opposite side of Dwindle Cave. It's a big old sinking. I mean, this is trending right towards it. So whatever all this water's going into from these benches and from this creek here, it's swallowing a lot of it. Because even you have that down there too. A nice little cave system here, just probably worth getting into. Which is the right spot. Huh. I don't know if I'd want to dig on those rocks in the summer. With it being so snaky around here. But that's not a bad prospect. And again, Dwindle Cave itself isn't a bad lead. Once it dries out a little bit, well, hopefully it'll dry out in the summer. So I'll walk a little bit more, see what happens. Well, walked around the woods, found some leads. Nothing that is an incredible prospect, but some points of interest that, you know, maybe we'll pull out in the future, maybe not. Maybe we'll get another cold winter day and we can do this again. Meantime, see you all later.